What is up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Kensei Sensei, and today I'm going to be teaching you about how to say who, what, where, when, why, and how in Japanese, and some other Japanese words which may come useful to you when you're asking these questions. Let's get right in. So for the first word, I'm going to teach you how to say where in Japanese. The direct translation to where in Japanese is doko. Doko. Now the first thing that I want you to remember is this sentence structure. First, you're going to put the location or the person or the object of which you're going to ask where the location is. So for example, if I want to ask where the toilet is or where the washroom is, then I'm first going to put toire in front of the sentence. After that, you're going to follow this sentence structure, which is wa doko desu ka? Wa doko desu ka? So if I add toire to this sentence structure, it would be toire wa doko desu ka? Toire wa doko desu ka? And this would mean where is the toilet or where is the washroom. Now in order for you to understand this sentence structure properly, we're going to have to break it down. So the first part of the sentence is going to be your location or your person or your object, which you're going to ask where the location is. Then we're using the sentence particle wa. Now remember, in my previous lessons, I've taught you that the wa sentence particle is the topic particle, which means it allows you to set the topic for the sentence. So in our question, the topic of the sentence is toire. And this allows you to set the topic and then ask the question. So after the wa sentence particle, we have doko. Now remember, doko means where in Japanese. And by attaching wa doko, it allows you to directly address and directly ask where that object or location is. So toire wa doko, that alone can be a sentence. Now we add desu ka for formality and also to make the sentence complete. So all together we have toire wa doko desu ka? Toire wa doko desu ka? Now let's change the object or change the location. If I ask sensei wa doko desu ka? Sensei wa doko desu ka? That means where is the teacher? And all I did simply was change the object or the location that I'm asking about. Now this is a very simple sentence structure. So now let's reverse it and you're going to try to answer this question. So if I ask you, toire wa doko desu ka? All you have to do really when you're answering this question is change two things, which is doko and desu ka. Instead of doko, which means where, you're just going to add where that location is. You're going to put the answer right there. If someone asks you, toire wa doko desu ka? And the toilet is in the second floor, you can just put that answer where the doko is. Toire wa doko desu ka? Toire wa 2階です. And notice how instead of doko, I put the answer 2階, which is the second floor. Also notice that I changed desu ka to this because you're now answering the question. You're not asking a question back. So you have to remove the ka. Now we can switch up this sentence structure a little bit and make it a little bit more complex. What you can do is instead of saying doko desu ka, you can either ask doko ni arimasu ka or doko ni imasu ka. Now these are the two verbs in Japanese that I want you to know. Aru versus iru. Aru and iru basically mean the same thing, but we use it differently in different circumstances. Aru and iru basically means to exist or to be there. So we would use this word often whenever you're asking where something is. Now the difference between aru and iru is very simple. With inanimate objects or objects that are not living, we have to use aru. And for objects that are living, like animals or humans, we have to use iru. Now here's a question for you. If we're asking where the teacher is, would we use aru or iru in this sentence? Remember, aru is for objects that are not living, and iru is for objects that are living, or living things basically. Now the answer is iru. we're going to use いる because 先生 or the teacher is a living object. It is a living thing. So what you can do with 先生はどこですか is that we just change the ですか a little bit. Instead of saying ですか we're going to say にいますか With the full sentence, it would become 先生はどこにいますか先生はどこにいますか This means where's the teacher? Same thing as 先生はどこですか but you're changing it up a little bit. Now let me show you an example sentence where we're using ある instead of いる. So if it's an inanimate object or an object that is not living, for example, a textbook. Let's say I want to ask, where is the history textbook? In Japanese, this would be 歴史の教科書はどこにありますか So instead of どこにいますか we're asking どこにありますか So the sentence would be 歴史の教科書 The history textbook 歴史の教科書はどこにありますか Where is the history textbook? So the second word that I'm going to be teaching you is how to say what in Japanese. What in Japanese is 何 何 Now you may be familiar with this because of this meme.
前はもう死んでいる。何?
But what it basically means is what. Now how do we use 何 in a sentence? I want you to memorize this basic sentence structure. First, you're going to put the object that you're going to be talking about or asking about. You're going to be asking about what it is. Then you ask, は何ですか? は何ですか? One thing to point out here is we're not saying は何ですか? は何ですか is wrong. You have to remember that it is 何ですか, even though what directly translates to 何. So all you have to do basically is add the object at the front of the sentence structure. If you're asking what is an apple, for example, the object in this case is the apple. You're asking about what is an apple. So apple in Japanese is ringo. So all you have to do is put ringo at the front of the sentence and then attach this sentence structure. Ringo wa nan desu ka? Ringo wa nan desu ka? This basically means what is an apple. Another example is これは何ですか? これは何ですか? これ basically means this in Japanese. So this sentence would basically translate to what is this? Now here is another set of words that you need to remember. That is あれ、これ and それ. Now あれ、これ and それ all mean that. But the difference between these three words is the distance of where the object is relative to yourself. So for example, これ is something that we use when we're addressing objects that is very close to you. So これ would be an object that is somewhere around your reach. And then the second furthest that in Japanese is それ. So maybe somewhere that you see very close. Maybe you're at an aquarium and you're saying, what is that? And the fish is maybe a few meters away from you. In that case, you'll use それ instead of これ. And lastly, あれ is that when an object is the furthest away from you. So maybe it's a few kilometers away, but you can see it, and you're asking, あれは何ですか? So all you have to know here is if you say, これは何ですか? それは何ですか? あれは何ですか? These are all saying, what is that? But the only difference between these three is the distance of where the object is relative to yourself. Now another set of words that I want you to remember other than あれ, それ, and これ is あの, その, and この. I know it sounds very similar, which it is, but we use these in a different case. So in this case, we always need an object following the この, その, and あの. What I mean by this is, for example, この人. この人. This means this person. Notice in English, we're using the word this to specify a specific person. So if I say this person or that person, then we're talking about a specific person that is around us. That is the same case with Japanese. We say この人 or あの人 or その人. And in this case, instead of using あれ, これ and それ, we have to use この, その and あの. So we don't say あれ人 or これ人. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't work. So what you have to do in the case where we're specifying specific objects and we're saying that person or that fruit or that whatever. In these cases, we have to use この、その and あの instead of これ、それ and あれ. Now I'm going to be teaching you how to say who. Who in Japanese is 誰. Now for 誰, I want you to remember this sentence structure. First, you're going to say the person that we're talking about, and then say は誰ですか? は誰ですか? So for example, if I say Steve Jobs は誰ですか? That means who is Steve Jobs? And it is very simple. All you have to do here is use the sentence particle は to set the topic. In this case, it is the person that we're talking about or asking who it is. And then we ask 誰ですか? Who is that person? Now I have a question for you. I just explained what is the difference between あれ、これ、それ. If I ask you この人は誰ですか? What am I asking? この人は誰ですか? この人は誰ですか? Now the answer is who is this person? Who is this person? Remember, この人 means this person, and we're using この because we're specifically talking about a person that is near us. We're not saying これ人. That doesn't make sense. この人. So as a result, この人は誰ですか means who is this person? Now let's talk about when. When in Japanese is いつ. いつ. Now for this, I want you to remember this sentence structure. First, you're going to add the event. You're going to put the event at the beginning of the sentence. Then you're going to ask はいつですか? はいつですか? And it's very similar to the other sentence structures. For example, はどこですか? or は何ですか? But for this, instead of where or what, you're going to ask when. So here's an example. イベントはいつですか? イベントはいつですか? In this sentence, you're asking when is the event? When is the event? Another example is 誕生日はいつですか? 誕生日はいつですか? And in this sentence, 誕生日 means birthday. So the sentence is asking when is your birthday? 誕生日はいつですか? Now another thing that you can do when you're asking when is something is to use a verb. What I mean by this is, for example, イベントはいつ始まりますか? イベントはいつ始まりますか? In this sentence, I'm using the verb 始まる, which means to start. So this sentence basically means when is the event going to start? Another example is イベントはいつ終わりますか? イベントはいつ終わりますか? That means when is the event going to finish? Now as you can see, instead of ですか, you can use a verb instead, like 終わりますか or 始まりますか. And in this way, you can specifically ask when something is going to start or finish. Now let's move on to the word how. How in Japanese is どう. Now for this, I want you to remember this sentence structure. はどうですか? はどうですか? Now again, it's the very same sentence structure as the previous words that we've been studying in this lesson. And so in this case, we just have to add the subject at the front. So whatever you're asking how something is. So if I say 調子はどうですか? 調子はどうですか? 調子 can mean your mental health or your physical health or just how well you're doing. So what 調子はどうですか means is how are you doing? It's basically asking whether or not they're feeling healthy, if they're okay mentally, if they're okay physically. 調子はどうですか? Another example is 先生の具合はどうですか? 先生の具合はどうですか? So in this sentence, I'm asking how's the teacher doing? How is the teacher's health? Now if I'm asking about the past, then I have to use the past tense, which in this case would be どうでしたか? So if I say クリスマスはどうでしたか? That means how was Christmas? And in this case, you're asking was it fun or how was it basically? Lastly, I'll be explaining how to say why in Japanese. The direct translation of why in Japanese is なんで or なぜ. For this sentence structure, I'm not going to ask you to say はなぜですか or はなんでですか. Instead, for なんで, I want you to put the なんで at the front of the sentence. So if you put なんで at the beginning of the sentence, in the middle, what you have to put is the sentence that you're asking about. So why is so and so? So for example, if I say なんで学校に行くの? or なんで学校に行きますか? In this sentence, I'm asking, why do you go to school? First, I say なんで, and then in the middle, I have the sentence which I'm asking about, which is 学校に行きます or 学校に行く, which means to go to school. So whatever you're asking why about, you have to put that in the middle. So なんで学校に行きますか? And we're using ますか because we're asking a question. Another example question that you could ask to a Japanese person is なんで英語を勉強してるんですか? This means why are you studying English? Now, for this sentence, you don't need to know why we say 勉強しているんですか? This is basically studying, the ing part, but I haven't taught you that, so you can ignore that. But the focus of this example question is the なんで, the use of なんで. なんで英語を勉強している? That is studying English. 英語を勉強している is studying English. So by putting that after なんで英語を勉強しているんですか? You are asking, why are you studying English? Now that is the end of today's video. In today's lesson, I taught you how to say the 5 W's in Japanese and also how, and also これ、それ、どれ, and also the verbs ある and いる. If you have any more questions, you can leave a comment down below and I'll try to get to you as soon as possible. Also make sure to check out my Discord server, which is a language exchange server between Japanese speakers and English speakers. And also, if you're interested in taking free Japanese lessons, check out Japanese School Amino. I also have Instagram and Twitter. All those links will be in the description down below, so make sure to check those out. But until next time, mata ne!